Okay, I thought I would show you how I make the ball that I use for the scrap blanket, how I do it, how I tie the yarns together. And what I generally do is I have all my yarns in my basket and I kind of divide them by color and by pattern, if it's a variegated color, if it's just a single color, and I'll usually try and line them up every other. So this one doesn't have a lot of color variation. It's almost like a solid color. And then I have another color ball. And so I kind of loosely do that as far as what colors I'm going to use. But I don't want it to always be matchy-matchy. I don't want it always to be solid color, solid color, solid. So sometimes in some of my stripes, I would have two solids together or two stripes together or three stripes together. But I wanted to show you how I go about starting the little magic ball so that I'm not constantly tying on new colors. I just do one ball that does it all. So I'll pick my first color and I'm just going to wrap around to start my first color. And you can wrap as many times as you want, as long of a color stripe as you want, but say that feels about right. No, there's no right or wrong. That feels about right. So then I will cut my yarn. I'm ready to tie on my second ball, so we'll get that one out of the way. And I'm just going to pull this off my fingers and just kind of lay it here for a minute. If it gets undone, that's okay. We'll redo it. So I lay my old yarn. Let me see if I can focus this a little bit better. Okay. So I put my first yarn going this way with the tail right about here. Then I'm going to pick my second ball, which is going to be this one, and I'm going to tie it on. So my second ball, I want it to be lined up like this. So I have my first ball going that direction and my second ball going that direction. And I'm going to tie an overhand knot here and an overhand knot here. So we'll do this real slow and up close so you can see what's happening. I take the original color, the first color, and I bring it over, under, and then I pick up the tail and I tie like a knot you're going to tie a shoe with, kind of a thing. So I just tie an overhand knot. And I don't pull it super tight, but I pull it just snug. And now I'll do the exact same thing with this tail end. I go over, under, and then I pick up the tail and the other side and I do an overhand knot. And again, I pull it snug but not tight. So I have my old color, my first color, and my second color, and there's a knot on either side. And then this is the magic part. This is called a magic ball. So this is the magic part. You slide it together, you pull on both sides, and the knots come to the center. And they form a really, really solid knot. So you pull tight. Not tight enough that you can break your yarn, so be careful, but you want it pretty darn tight. And then I also pull on this direction pretty tight. So I've pulled this way and I've pulled this way. So that knot is very, very tight. So now, because I really don't want to have 1,000 ends in this blanket to have to weave in, I've just decided I'm going to be okay with a little bit of the tails showing. So I leave, I don't know, what is that, 1/4 of an inch? Not quite a 1/2 an inch, a little bit longer maybe than 1/4 of an inch. And I leave that as my tail. And then wherever I am in my knitting, this can just appear where we're going from one color to the new color. I don't mind that the little tails show up in my knitting, and I'll show you that in a minute. Now, if you're more fussy about it and it matters to you, you can definitely leave the tails longer and then weave them in. But with this kind of a blanket, I just didn't want to have 50,000 tails. So now that I have that color tied on now, I come back to this and I kind of fold it. So the stuff I had around my fingers, I kind of fold it over itself, kind of wad it up into a kind of a ball, and then I just start wrapping, and I'll go a couple of times in this direction, then a couple of times in the next direction, and then I just kind of keep spinning this ball until I have what I feel like is enough of the new color. And again, it's up to you, whatever feels right. You can have a big section of color, or you can have lots of small sections, or you can have some small, some large. It's just up to you. So I just kind of keep turning this ball and keep spinning around the new yarn until I feel like, okay, that's probably enough. So let me get a little bit further. Okay, that's probably enough. So now I'm going to do this next ball. So again, I'm going to cut my yarn. I'm done with that one. So I have my ball going this way and my ball going that way. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to take this and go over and under. And then I'm going to pick up the tail and the other part of it and do an overhand knot. Just a simple overhand knot. And I'm going to make it snug but not too tight. And then I'm going to take this tail, and it's kind of short here, so I'm going to make the tail longer. I'm just going to pull this through so that's just a little bit longer so I have more to work with. And then I'm going to tighten this up again. Tighten that up just a little bit. So now I'm going to take this end and I'm going to go over and then under, and then I'm going to pick up the tail and do an overhand knot in it, maybe an overhand knot, there we go, simple, and then pull it snug, not tight but snug. And then I'm going to pull on both ends, and you can see my knots get a little bit loose. That's okay. You can just kind of tighten them up and then keep pulling until the knots meet each other and pull kind of tight. And then I grab the little tails and I pull kind of tight, and then I trim my tail to be about that long. Now you can, if you want to, you could use, if you have any of that seam glue that some sewers use, then you could put a little dot of glue on there. But I find, I've done that before, but I find that the glue dries a little stiff and crusty, so that you can feel it in your blanket. So that's that. And now I'm going to spin this around and continue making my magic ball using the new color. So that is how you make the ball. And I typically make a ball that's maybe about this big around, a pretty good size with a lot of colors going through it. And I try not to repeat a color. I try to use every color or just about every scrap I have without repeating colors, but you can do it any which way you like. So I just keep rolling this new ball until it's pretty big, or whenever, it's up to you. And you can just continue to add colors as you go. You can kind of mix it up if you want to have warm colors on one side and bright colors on the other, cool colors on one side. You can just make this ball any which way you want. And then when you're all done, you'd start making your first column or your next panel And you would do your slip knot a little further down from the tip, make your slip knot, and then start making your increases and start your triangle with your increases. But that's how you make the magic ball. Now let me show you on my actual blanket what these little color changes look like. So let me back my camera up just a little bit. You can see a couple of them popping out right off the bat. There's one. Now for me, I don't mind that. It looks to me, this is why I like this blanket. It looks to me like a homemade blanket and not something you purchase at the store. So I'm perfectly fine with that little nub. There's another one. There's a little nub. As we look through it, there's another one. I don't mind that, especially if it means I don't have to tie in and weave in ends. There's a little nub. There's a little nub. So overall on the blanket, they kind of just blend in. I mean, you kind of have to really look for them, but every time there's a color change between one color and the next, you'll find a nub. But I don't mind that, and they do blend in, and to me it makes it look like a very homey, cozy, homemade Afghan, and not something that's mass produced, but something that an actual person sat here and made. So I hope that helps, and carry forth and do good things. And I'd love to see what your panels start to look like. So let's share them together. Tag me with the hashtag Tales from the Stash, and then I will see it and can cheer you on. So thanks for watching.